As Kasey said, thanks everybody for joining us and taking maybe about 60 minutes out of your day, maybe a little less, to talk about the value of a vCIO or what a vCIO actually is. If we were in a conference room, I'd probably ask by a show of hands if or anybody knows what a virtual chief information officer is and what that person does. But we don't. I guess you could raise your hand if you wanted to with the functionality in Zoom, but that's what we're going to talk about. Kasey is going to indulge us on what a virtual chief information officer is, what their role is, not just within an MSP, but what the value it brings to a law firm and the legal community as a whole. So appreciate the time. With that in mind, I could be quiet because center stage is Kasey. So why don't you give a little bit of an introduction of yourself, sir?
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. My name's Kasey Wince. I am the Virtual Chief Information Officer here at STS, and I've been in this in the IT field for 30 years or so. I absolutely love doing this stuff. My roles have always been client-centric. So from either a business owner to an engineer, service manager, whatever it may have been, it's always been client-centric because that's my favorite part of the role is working with people, having good conversations with folks, and seeing their success. That's really what drives me in a lot of ways. So on a day-to-day basis, what I contribute towards our clients' success is I'm a strategist for our clients. I'm an IT strategist. So ultimately an educator. We all try and be that in the IT role, but specifically for my role, I don't do the technical side of things. So I don't have to fix computers anymore. I don't have that role. I've now stepped into the business strategy side of things. So that's where I can help our clients really understand how to achieve their business goals, how to avoid surprises, and help not only business owners and admin staff make well-informed decisions regarding technology, but we do that by creating easy to understand roadmaps, budgets, things of that nature. So I'll give you kind of some examples of some of the areas that I touch on sometimes on a daily basis. Would be things like Windows 11. That's a big one right now. I'm sure everyone's heard that. Obviously, coming up in October, so that's a big part of my focus right now is making sure that all of our clients are in a very good way regarding that. Some other examples. It seems to be the year of moves. A lot of our clients are moving or opening new offices, so that's a big focus as well. But also growth patterns, AI, just improving security stances, becoming more efficient, increasing maturity levels, things of that nature. So at the end of it, I want to be a trusted advisor, and that's my goal.
Great. Well, thanks for that intro. For those that don't know, Kasey is the vCIO here at Strategic Technology Solutions. So before we dig into it, just a little housekeeping. We will have a Q&A, question and answer at the end, but if something crosses your mind, any comments, questions, thoughts, or concerns, or you just want to give Kasey a thumbs up, feel free to do so. We could interrupt and we could answer that question as we're rolling through this. So very, very informal, nothing really, for those of us that know us, we're not very formal all the time. But that all said, first off, Kasey, what is a virtual chief information officer and what role does it play within a law firm?
Sure. So a virtual chief information officer is somebody who looks at the strategy, the business strategy, the roadmap for a client. So I think as important it is to understand what I do, it's important to understand what I don't do. So, for example, I said I don't fix computers anymore. I love doing that. It was great, but I don't do that anymore. I don't look at tombstone data. I don't look at ticket trends for understanding, what ticket was submitted yesterday and the status of that. We have a team that does that. Happy to help, facilitate a discussion there. But my role is looking forward. So I want to keep my eyes forward with you, having good discussions with a business owner, the admin staff, and making sure, again, we remove surprises, people understand the technology that they have in use currently, and we're able to make sure that as we make decisions as a partnership here, that they're well-informed decisions going forward. We don't want to have surprises come up, and if something does happen to come up, of course, we'll be here through that process. We'll help, but we want to look at things like regulatory risks, compliance, creating those technology roadmaps, making sure that you have good spends going on. That money's going to be spent. Let's make sure it's being done wisely in an efficient manner. We want to make sure that we have good security stances. And if you aren't in a good place when it comes to security, let's have that discussion. Let's make those improvements. So there's opportunity there to help a client become better at what they do on a day-to-day basis when it comes to technology, becoming more secure. And that's a big part of how I align the IT with business goals and creating a safer environment for our clients to move forward and achieve those goals.
I did write down two questions, but I'll save them for later when it's more appropriate. Because you got me thinking a little bit about some things. That's great. That's what this is for, right?
Yeah,
Um, why should a firm leverage? Well, actually, why should a firm leverage a vCIO, and maybe why? What type of characteristics of a firm may there not be a fit or that type of role that's appropriate for a firm with vCIO?
absolutely. Yeah. So I don't think that there's a firm that wouldn't benefit from a VCIO, no matter their size. Uh, that reaches kind of an upper limit. Once you get above maybe 100 seats, generally those larger firms are going to have some sort of a CIO on staff or even a fractional CIO. But that doesn't mean that a vCIO can't integrate into that and augment, help, provide assistance. So I think every firm, no matter what, can benefit, even the small firms. So if you have a firm that's maybe two, three, four, five users, they're going to grow. That's probably their plan. And even if they're not going to grow, they still want to be successful. They still want to be efficient. So a small firm, a medium-sized firm, all of those folks can benefit from the role of a vCIO because we're providing information and educating folks on technology and keeping them ahead of the curve where needed and keeping them stable where needed as well. That's that spend to make sure that we're not overspending on things that they may not need. AI kind of falls into that in a lot of ways. So to that end, there really isn't a firm out there that can't benefit from a VCIO, and it's just a matter of buying into that, leaning into that role, and being part of it.
The questions I thought of earlier kind of you led me to them now, so I don't have to wait. So on that topic, firms, and you kind of hit on a little bit firms that whether it's 100, even a little bit lower, possibly even a little bit higher, they
Mhm.
traditionally have some level of IT staff.
Yeah. Yep.
How does the kind of similar question? How does the vCIO collaborate and work with a firm that either has that type of staff internally, or even with an IT services company, MSP, and maybe how do you work with our IT our team that's supporting these law firms?
Absolutely. So if a firm already has a CIO on staff, they're probably busy. There's probably things going on that they may want to offload onto somebody else, and they want to look at the big picture things above and beyond, maybe that 100 user count because your perspective changes at that point in time. So there's kind of, I guess we could call it low-hanging fruit that a vCIO may be able to come in and knock off for a CIO and allow some of that reporting to go up to that person. And they don't have to spend that time generating that report, or even we can point of confirming things that they're already thinking about doing, having discussions, and being a sounding board. That's another side of this is that we don't want people to go alone into this. So even if there is a CIO already on staff, we're happy to help in really any way possible. But ultimately, we want to make their lives easier. And if we're able to do that for the CIO, then obviously that has a cumulative effect for the rest of the team, for their staff. And on our side, I am oftentimes a conduit for information. The client will talk to me and say, hey, we've got this going on, or we're thinking about that, or we're moving, whatever the case might be. And I'm able to share that back with the team and keep them in the loop on things. And even as things progress and as I put things on roadmaps for clients, having that internal discussion, not only for the initial advice of what that should look like, confirming my conclusion here to make sure that we're talking to each other. We have good communications.
How about those firms that don't have the CIO role? It might be maybe an IT manager, director, even maybe just a admin or just some support folks.
Yeah. Yeah. We have several of our clients are co-managed clients, and they have that exact scenario going on. And we just come in and augment them. So we allow them to handle the things that they want to handle. They can offload things to us, but that also includes offloading the vCIO role to us and working with them again as a partnership just to have good conversations. And we want to ultimately make sure that, those people are, um, I guess, to the end, look good. But we want them to be successful. We want them when the ownership and their leadership look at them and say, "Hey, great job on this." If that's something that we've helped with, that's fantastic. That makes us feel great because at the end of this, their success is going to be our success, and not just in a monetary way, but in a morale way, because we want to feel that. We want to enjoy that success with them.
This next question I think is going to knock off two or three other questions. And you know this because we've experienced it all the time. We go into a firm and they don't know what they don't know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So are there how does the VCIO role uh, add value in that area? What unique opportunities exist in a situation where a firm doesn't necessarily know what they don't know, and getting into the devil in the details?
Sure. So good communications is where it's going to start. Just having good conversations with folks and allowing them to understand what they've got going on, because we're gonna come in and look at the entire situation holistically. We're gonna connect all the dots between the different aspects of their business, between their DMS, their billing, how they're storing data, security stance, the whole bit. And then we are able to share that information with not only um, ownership, so they can make good decisions regarding their goals, but also the admin staff, so they can understand maybe some of the challenges that are going on internally that we need to address on a little bit of a specific basis to help them become more efficient. And that's really where we come in and we just provide information. We shine some lights in some of those dark corners that they may not have ever seen, because if they don't know what they don't know, our role is to help them understand those things. And we do that with, compassion and understanding that there may be a level of maturity that they haven't reached. So some of these things may be on their short-term roadmap, some of these things may be on their long-term roadmap, but just getting them good information and then allowing them to make decisions based on that is ultimately the service that is going to be best valued for them, because we're helping them understand spends and how they can get to where they want to be.
Um, on that same note, there are also many firms that we come into contact with. Some of them might be on this, tuning into this, that this is their first exposure to this type of role or this type of service, if you will. And you had mentioned in the beginning about education, and I'm assuming that's one of the certain or the particular core functions in those conversations with somebody that's just being exposed to this as a newbie, so to speak. So, other than the education piece, dig down that into that a little bit deeper as far as guiding someone that's just new to this.
Absolutely. So this is a role that hasn't been around for a very long time. IT's been around for several decades, where vCIO, 7 to 10 years, somewhere in that range. And so not everybody's had the opportunity to work with a vCIO and understand the benefits that come with it, and that's okay. So again, it's part of having those good communications, but we have a we have that opportunity to say, hey, these are the these are the things that you've never been privy to before. These are the things that you've maybe felt responsible for dealing with yourself or overwhelmed on. We can take that on from you. We can reduce that, and it's part of the offering that we have. So it makes us a complete solution and allows them to focus on the things that are important to them. Growing the business, making more money, addressing their own internal projects that they may have going on. And again, it doesn't matter if we're augmenting their team or not, but we're really able to allow new people to what we do as a vCIO, to feel a little bit of freedom to say, hey, I can trust this person. I can allow them in, and I can ensure that what they tell me is going to be good advice, it's going to be vetted, and there's going to be good communications. And if they do have questions, they have the freedom to ask. They have the freedom to say, "Hey, I need to understand this better," or I don't understand this at all. Let's dive into this deeper, or this frustrates me, or this scares me. Windows 11, if you're not on board with Windows 11 now, that should scare you. That should be something that is sending off alarms for you. So if you haven't addressed those things yet, get with your provider, make sure that they are doing those things for you that will move you towards that goal, because Windows 10 is going away. So that is probably one of the most important things as a vCIO that we started August or September of last year, of having those conversations with folks to make sure that they were well prepared for this. But that's a big one.
Yeah, you're actually taking some of my thunder because you're answering some of the questions before I'm even asking them, which is good, which is good. Um, do you in these conversations where it have in maybe accepting this role? There's a change topic that we'll get into a little bit, but
Sure.
accepting this role or relating to this role.
Yeah, absolutely. So the big thing is that leadership has to see value in this role. If not, they're not going to buy in. And at the end of the day, if we don't have leadership buying into the role and the decisions that are being made, then we're going to struggle. So that's where I want to be involved early in this process to make sure that we're working through this, that we're creating those relationships, those bonds, that trust. And once the folks that are making the decisions understand that there's value in this, that's where the buy-in really occurs, because they're going to dedicate some time to this, and they're going to make sure that they're there for those meetings, and that when those decisions are being made and the really important things are being discussed, they're part of that. So, even if that decision is made outside of a meeting, they're still informed and they have the understanding of the reasoning behind those things, and then they can make a well-informed decision.
I find it interesting that you indicated that this role is fairly new within the last 10, 15 years or so, roughly. Um, why wouldn't an why wouldn't an IT service organization or why wouldn't an MSP have this particular role? It seems like it is definitely a need, at least from our perspective. And I've been doing this for a long time with firms, and it seems like it's a definite need in most firms that we go into that don't have that strategic guidance from this type of role. But why wouldn't this be a standard offering for an IT services organization?
It I think strategy is always part of an IT solution, but this role specifically um, that's obviously a cost point for an MSP. So they may not be mature enough to have a vCIO on staff yet. Their clientele that they're working with may not be mature yet enough to be able to get value completely, in their opinion, from it having a vCIO on staff. They may not be asking the right questions of their clientele to understand that they need an MSP. So there's a couple factors there, but at the end of it, most people who own an IT company kind of fill this role to a certain extent, because they're generally pretty knowledgeable about IT. They've done some strategy, they're business owners. They understand some of those items, some of the road mapping, the budgeting, things of that nature. So they tend to kind of double as a CEO, CIO, CFO, and also a strategist for their clients. Whereas if you break that out, that allows that MSP to focus on, really bigger goals, and, that CEO to look longer down the road, and then allow their team to do the job that they need to do. So there's a couple of different factors that may come on board there. But I can say across the board that I think every MSP should offer a vCIO offering. And if you're working with an MSP that doesn't right now, have that conversation with them. See if they can provide that role to you dedicated, or look at a fractional vCIO, or look at an MSP like STS that does. and have those conversations. And even if it's just an enlightenment conversation to have that further understanding, we're happy to do that.
What are the best ways that firms are leveraging a vCIO?
I think right now, as far as specific items you're talking about,
Yeah, I mean in 2025, sure, but historically trends, what
sure.
you've experienced over your career.
Sure. So I think the big part is just having another source of information that's dedicated to feeding that information to them, not getting a, oh, by the way, scenario. It's a, hey, let's be intentional about the information we're providing. Let's follow up on that information. Let's create a plan for that. And let's go ahead and show you not only once you've implemented it, how it's benefited you. Because there's a lot of times when money is spent and people don't know how it's benefiting them. So we want to have that information shared as well. So that's I think a kind of a lost art in a lot of ways within the IT field is that we tend to kind of play whack-a-mole. We knock things down, we get them off the list, and then we keep moving on, and we never take a look back to say, hey, let's review this. Let's look at how this level one security package has improved your security stance. Let's look at some reporting. Here's how things are better. And you may not see or feel all of them, but that's, I think, a big part of it is the education as well as to this is how you've spent this money and here's how it's benefiting you.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point with respect to adoption, and we see it often in firms where, and we could say it's technology as an umbrella, but specifically it comes down to applications.
Mhm.
Where a firm has invested and implemented a specific type of line of business application, and it
Yeah,
could be simple. It doesn't even have to be a document management system. It could be Teams, right?
sure.
Even Zoom that we're on now, they've made the investment, but they've adopted it, but they're not leveraging the full force of the
Yeah.
application, right? How do you get involved in that, or is that something you do get involved in creating a situation where their adoption is only at 25%, whether that's the employees are only 25% of the employees are only using the application, or they're only using 25% of the application.
Absolutely. So one of the important factors there is not going this alone, like I mentioned this before. So we work with the vendors. So let's say, for example, if it's I manage NetDocs, whatever it might be, we'll work with our points of contact there to say, hey, let's look at this client. How are they utilizing this application? Are they getting the most out of it financially? And are they getting out of it what they should for efficiency? And we're able to have those conversations not only with the vendor, but with the client, get them together, have those further discussions, and see if it's something that is it a training issue? Do they need a different module with something? Sometimes it's very simplistic in what needs to be done. If they're onboarding staff and that staff hasn't been through the proper training, maybe. So those are things that we tend to be aware of. Another great example of that is end user awareness training.
Mm.
So we get reporting on that, and we'll see that maybe there's only a 25% engagement. So we have conversations with our point of contact to say, hey, these are the folks that aren't engaging in this. Let's have a conversation with them. And then we can also show that, hey, if we're phishing those people, here's the results of this. Are they learning from this? So it's not just a deploy and forget it scenario. We try and be involved there as much as our clients will allow us to be as part of their day to day. So they have a better understanding of that product, that service, that they're purchasing, that they're spending money on, how it's benefiting them.
Casey, are there situations where the application or technology is evaluated and it's determined that maybe this isn't the best solution for the firm based upon the business and based upon the culture and based upon the way the firm could be using this technology? How does that conversation go?
Sure. So when you have an application, a service that you deploy, it's not a forever situation. It's not a deploy it and forget it. But you've got to be aware of how the world around you is changing. Maybe the goals of the firm has changed. Maybe even just the staff has changed. And if they are making a shift in maybe the type of law that they're practicing or their workload, is that tool just not keeping up with them? Have they grown? Have they matured to a point where they need to take the next step up to a larger application or a more efficient or more robust application and allow them to start doing some newer things and open their eyes to say, oh, wow, we didn't even know we could do X, Y, or Z. And having those conversations to move them forward as a firm and agreeing, again, maturing them and allowing them to become more efficient and ultimately more profitable. So certainly there's always that opportunity to evaluate things. The flip side of that is that, we try and be very wise about how we suggest money spent by our clients. And we work with vendors to say, is this worthwhile? And then have conversations with the client. And if the client says, hey, you know what, that's great, but we're not there yet, that's okay. But again, they've gotten the information. So if that decision maybe happens 6 months or a year down the road, we've already started laying the roadmap to say, this is what's available. So when they do make that decision, it's a well-informed decision that has some history to it.
You mentioned evolution, change, right? And technology, whether in business or our personal life, it's consistently evolving. Today, you got cybersecurity is always there. Artificial intelligence, that's the big topic, right? Um, Related to firms are typically late adopters, especially
Yes.
around technology. We culturally, as human beings, we're resistant, sensitive to change. So, how can firms and how could we all, to a degree, stay ahead of the curve or at least be better prepared as technology continues to evolve? And how does that vCIO role relate to that?
Sure. So I think it's fair to say the legal industry, when it comes to adoption, is a lot like molasses. It's slow, doesn't move fast, and that's okay to a certain extent. But at the same time, we need to respect the fact that when we're looking at a solution, we're looking at a problem and comparing solutions. How important is that problem? Is it an annoyance? Is it something that's really critical to you? We need to make sure that we kind of match that intensity to have the right solution in place because we've done all this before. There's not a lot new in the industry. We've been around long enough that we've probably seen it all. If we haven't seen it all, um, surprise me. I would love to see something new. It'd be fun. But at the same time, we have solutions ready to go for these things. And we're we're able to just have the right conversations with people and give them good, clean data that they can work off of and move that decision forward. The one thing that I think runs contrary is AI, because AI is almost I don't want to say like a shoot from the hip scenario, but at the same time, it's something that a lot of people just want to implement because it's cool and they don't really have a purpose behind it. And that creates risk. And at the end of the day, we try and look at everything through the guise of security, risk management, data compliance, things like that. And whenever you hear data compliance, that's your risk management when it comes to AI. So those are things that you want to be very aware of. And if you're going to implement AI, have a purpose for it, have a discussion with whomever is supporting you on that, and don't do those things by yourself. Shadow IT is the bane of the existence when it comes to IT support. So lean into making sure that you're having good conversations with your provider, whether it's us or somebody else. And, especially with AI, you don't want to have a bad spend there. You don't want to put yourself at risk on something. So just that's one that I would say that really requires good conversations and not something you want to make a decision on in a week. Take a little bit of time, do some evaluation, and really understand that.
I believe that's good guidance for any, well, really any decision, but technology in general. So, with respect to the change, is there things that you've been able to do in the vCIO role, or have seen be done to offer that confidence and guidance to navigate those changes? Because there are investments that are being made. You don't want to
Yep.
you don't want to spend money or invest money inappropriately on technology. There's always a chasm that we have to cross. You can't eliminate all risk or uncertainty or doubt. We have to cross that chasm. What are some of the things that the vCIO role can do to help mitigate some of those?
Sure. So the forecasting, the road mapping, the understanding of what's coming is a big part of that. Again, that happens through good communication and on a regular basis. But that's what, we see what's coming down the road because we've done the research. We're in conversations with the vendors. We're doing our own research on the back end to make sure that, this new thing that's coming out is going to be worthwhile. But the I think it gets back to a partnership to say, hey, how do we get there together? And you have to have that buy-in. Again, being part of the process and not fighting technology, allowing it to really do its job for you in the right way. And those spends that happen, we allow you to understand how that's going to impact you initially through the process and then afterwards.
When is the appropriate time for you to be involved? Because you talked about what's coming down the pipe, what's
Mhm.
coming down the road. How do you even get your arms around that? I'm guessing that is in the very, very early stages.
Yeah, I myself, I love being involved in pre-sales because I want to talk to somebody who's not even our client yet because I want to be able to share information with them. I don't want to gatekeep stuff. I want them to have as much information as possible, as early as possible. And the more information I can get from them, the better conversations I can have from them before they're even a client allows me to understand where they're at, allows me to give them some feedback, whether they join us as, in this partnership or not. But it also allows me to hit the ground running with them a little bit more when they do become one of our clients. And it takes away some of the learning curve because they've already gotten to know me a bit and they trust me to say, hey, this is the information we need, and I'm going to continue doing that for you. So as early in the relationship as possible, I want to be there having those discussions with people. And I want to continuously be there to say, when you do have a question, when you do want to have a conversation about something, let's do that. Let's sit down, let's have a conversation and go from there. And I say sit down. I'm based out of Tampa, so a lot of the things that I have conversations with are across Zoom and Teams with people like that. But I do that on a constant basis to make sure that those relationships are solid.
Bill just threw a question. I don't know if it's a question. It's more of a comment. It seems like the tech fear isn't always the problem. It's a comment, but I think we should pull it out, Bill, if you're okay with that, because it could be less of the technology being the fear, but the budgets and the cost typically to move to the top. So,
Yeah.
how do you massage that conversation? And I think you touched on it a little bit when you were talking about investments versus spend, but could you evaluate that a little bit?
Sure. So, and I agree. We don't, I'm not a fan of creating fear when it comes to technology, even when it comes to Windows 11. I say that should scare you a little bit because of the timeline, because of the possible investment that is going to be a surprise to you. Those are the things that most people fear. I don't want people to fear technology. I want them to embrace it and see how it can help them. The fear comes from the unknown or the surprises. That also creates frustration. It also creates it dings trust as well. So, we don't want people to be in a situation where if they aren't able to handle an expenditure, then what? What position does that leave them in? So having conversations further out allow for better preparedness. So that's why I said, hey, August, September of last year, we were talking about Windows 11, what that looked like, machines that may not be suitable for Windows 11. What's that process going to look like? Is there going to be downtime? How's this going to impact your team? So we removed the unknowns from the scenario and then we dealt with the facts to say, this is happening, and we're going to move forward with this, and this is how we're going to do it to ensure that people weren't scared of the scenario. They had good information. And then as we go through that process, we meet on a weekly basis to have those discussions. We have a phenomenal project manager here. Our professional services is just incredible. And they team up to have those good conversations to ensure people are informed and that they're in the loop and they feel like they are part of the solution because ultimately they are. They're making these decisions and we want them there.
It could create a level of predictability, which is always beneficial,
Sure.
especially when you're going to that those partners and that management folk. Um, you brought up something on a different conversation about some surprises. as it relates to technology and the business and how it impacts the business of law. You know, I think what we've been discussing here, one of a main role of you or a vCIO, I should say, is being able to align that technology roadmap to the vision of the firm. So
Yeah.
how is technology or how can technology really impact the actual business of law?
Sure. So a firm is going to, they're a small business at the end of the day. They're going to have goals, whether it's to expand, move offices, reach a certain revenue, whatever it might be. And technology can either help you get there or it can be an impedance. And we want to remove that roadblock from people's roadmaps. So to that end, we're able to say, here's the predictability, here's the thing that we see coming, here are the known factors, and we're able to say, how are we going to get through these things? And that may vary a little bit in how that discussion takes place. If it's somebody that's been with us for a while, the likelihood of them having surprises coming up is pretty low because we've had decent discussions. If it's somebody who's just coming on board with us, they may have a lot of surprises because through no fault of their own, or even maybe through no fault of the previous provider, they may have been neglected just a little bit, and they may not have been given that information. So when we shine a light on it, it's a surprise. And we want to make sure that we remove those surprises. We remove the things that prevent the firm from being efficient, being profitable, reaching their goals, and just on a day-to-day basis, just enjoying what they do when it comes to technology. We don't want them to struggle with it. We want that process to work well. And if it isn't, tell us. Have that conversation with us because there may be a nuance to what somebody is doing that we need to be aware of, and we would rather be aware of it before than after, and be able to assist with that.
Uh, it leads me to I want to dig deeper into that. In you know, are there some pieces of wisdom that you have, or some strategic tips you could offer that can help make simply help make people's relationship or firms' relationships with technology better?
I say don't struggle against technology. We don't want AI to take over the world, but it's a scenario to say we use these things every day. We use Zoom, Teams, a device of some sort of technology every day. And if that device isn't cooperating with you, if it's frustrating you at all, talk to somebody about it. And even if your MSP doesn't have a vCIO right now, talk to somebody within that firm that you think can help you with that. It's all about good communications because that's what's going to drive this relationship forward, is that aspect of it. And the other side of that is that if you are being given advice, then take that advice to heart. If it's something that works within your budget, implement that advice. Follow the leadership of those that you are trusting to guide you in the world of technology, and don't try and do it yourself. And I say that is one of the most important things because that can cause more harm than good. If you decide that you want to deploy an application or a piece of equipment, whatever it might be, doing that yourself, again, shadow IT, can do a lot of harm. It can cause delays, it can cause security risks, especially if we don't know about them for a period of time and we find out about them. And then it's okay, now we got to look back in time to see what was done. And if there were risks, do we need to mitigate anything? So it's that conversation part that really drives this relationship.
Well, I got education, guide, strategy, communication, all these things you touched on deeply. Kind of want to land this plane here a little bit before we get into some Q&A. But from a day-to-day perspective, and then, on a long-term roadmap, how does the VCIO role, how does it help make a firm's lives more ideal?
Again, I think being that education part, we are inherently, we have to make decisions based off data. We try and remove emotions from all of this because technology has to be data driven. So we're able to make those good decisions based off of data. But we're also compassionate. It's our, when we look at our family values here at STS, it's our number one family value is compassion. And that's what we want to have for our clients is compassion to say, we understand this, we feel your pain. How do we make this better? We address that internally. We work as a team to address that. And then we come back with guidance and suggestions to say, this is how it's going to make your life better. And we give a roadmap. We give this is how we're going to roll this out. This is what it's going to look like. So again, we're removing the fear from that because the fear of the unknown. What's this really going to be? How's this going to hurt us possibly? And have those discussions. And then the flip side of that is that when we're done with a project, we ask questions to say, how did this go for you? Is there anything that you think we could have done better? Because we're all about getting better at this on a daily basis. So we aren't perfect, but we try and get really close to that pen for you as a client. And we if we don't hit it, we're all about hearing about it too because we want that.
Yeah, and that's that's some of the value that law firms provide is that I believe they have the transparency to explain where we're dropping the ball and what we need to do to improve it.
Sure.
So, and those are the relationships and partnerships that really end up being most productive and successful. So